All right, Father. In the case of Freddie Montero, you became aware the suspicion of his having abused a child became the subject of a police investigation, and you were in contact with the police, correct?
That's correct.
And in that connection, you had some discussions with a detective investigating that about whether you could or should contact Freddie Montero before the police contacted him, correct?
I don't recall that.
The police records seem to reflect that, or the records seem to reflect that you were instructed not to contact Montero before they could. Do you remember that?
If that's what the record says, I believe it. I don't recall it.
They gave you some credit for not having done that.
Very nice.
You remember?
I honestly don't recall that. My general notion was that once a matter went to the police were in charge of it, and that I would not enter in to interfere with their work.
And in other words, you let them do their job and investigate it, and not tip off the accused or get in the way of the investigation.
That's exactly right. Sure.
In the case of Curtis Waymeyer, you made contact with him personally, with Deacon Vomasek, before the police could or did, didn't you? Yes or no?
No. Well, I'm going to, first of all,
if
correct that it's
no, then
I'll
ask you about it.
Deacon
Let him answer your question.
Deacon Vomastek, just so V-O-M-A-S-T-E-K.
Okay.
And I did not make contact with Curtis Waymeyer without police permission to do so.
What police officer gave you permission to contact him?
Deacon Vomastek, in my presence, spoke with a police officer. I don't know the name of the police officer. Deacon Vomastek was actually speaking.
Is that a conversation on the way to the parish?
It is.
And it's your claim that a police officer gave you permission to go there and interview Curtis Waymeyer? Is that your position?
The first half of what you said is true. I had permission from the police officer. I was not going to interview Curtis Waymeyer, but to serve a decree on him.
And do you know what police officer you claim gave such permission for you to do that?
I do not.
What was that directly from the police officer to you?
It was to Deacon Vomastek.
In the car on the way there?
That's correct. I was ordered by Archbishop Neinstead through Jennifer Hasselberger to serve a decree of removal as pastor on this fellow, on Waymeyer. I objected that we ought not to do this till we had the support of the police department. I was assured by archdiocesan colleagues that the police were already involved and that we could indeed do this. I was not satisfied by the assurance of my colleagues.
Your colleagues assured you?
Yes, that they had made the call. Ms. Hasselberger Haselberger, Father Laird, Laird, and Mr. Eisenzimmer, Eisenzimmmer, assured me that the police had been notified and that we could proceed. That was not good enough for me, so I asked Deacon Vomostek, who's himself a retired St. Paul police officer, to ensure that the assurances I had from my colleagues were in fact accurate.
Okay, let's back up. First, you said you were ordered by Archbishop Neinstedt to serve the decree.
That's correct.
What date were you ordered to do that?
I don't know the date. It was a Wednesday.
Okay, how long before you went to the parish to serve the decree upon Curtis Waymeyer were you ordered by Neinstedt to do so?
About an hour.
Did you talk to Archbishop Neinstedt about that?
I did not.
How did you know you were to serve the decree then?
Ms. Haselberger told me that I should.
Did she give you the decree?
I have a vague memory she did.
And at that point, to serve the decree, were you now acting as the promoter of justice?
I believe I was at that point.
And you were delegated to be the promoter of justice then at that point?
Now there's where that term delegations, I was appointed.
Appointed. Okay.
Appointed, yes.
Okay. And that would be by Archbishop?
That's correct.
And before you were appointed and instructed to serve the decree, what did you know and what were you told about the reason for the decree?
I was contacted the evening before. My recollection is that it was very late in the workday, but I don't recall, again, if when that was exactly, either by phone call or email, and asked to appear at a meeting the next morning in Father Laird's office.
So this is the evening of Tuesday you're talking about?
That's correct.
Because you know you went to serve the decree on Wednesday. That's what you
right.
know.
Yes.
And so on that evening you're contacted by whom?
I believe by Andrew Eisenzimmer.
And you are told, he's the chancellor, and you're told what?
I don't know if in the initial communication or subsequently, so I don't know if I spoke to him once or more than once. Told that Curtis Waymeyer has committed abuse, and we have to meet the following morning
Of a
to
child.
discuss of a child. Yes, pardon me, the abuse of a child. We have to meet the following morning to take the follow-up steps. I asked Mr. Eisenzimmer, have the police been notified? He said, yes, they have.
You have a direct recollection of that, asking him that by phone?
I do.
Okay. And the initial contact was an email with a telephone follow-up? Is that what it was?
I honestly don't recall, Mr. Anderson. Did I have 2 phone calls, a phone call, an email, 2 emails? I don't recall.
But your recollection is that on that Tuesday evening, Eisenzimmer told you the police had had been reported to the police?
That's correct. Let me just say, now as soon as I give you that answer, I realize I had some back and forth with Eisenzimmer. So I must at one point have been on a phone, although I can imagine that could have happened by email. I don't know that for certain.
So Eisenzimmer's declaration to you that led you to the belief that it had been reported to the police, to the best of your recollection, was his lips to your ears by phone, or how?
Either, yes, from him to me, either by phone or by email, and I don't recall which.
Well, that's a kind of a startling thing to hear And I'm confused why you wouldn't remember if he told you or you saw it in email. Can you clarify that for me, why you can't clarify that more?
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I will say it's so startling. I recall clearly learning it. I honestly can't recall the mode by which I learned it. The fact itself is, I agree with your characterization, it's a very startling, horrific fact.
Especially when you already knew a lot about Waymire and his history, right?
That's correct.
When you first heard the allegation or that a Waymire had abused that child, what was your reaction?
Tremendous sadness that this crime had happened.
And did you also reflect on what you had known about Waymire going back many years and how he had been permitted to be in ministry at that time?
I don't recall that I did that evening. I certainly did the following day.
Did you feel a sense of dread and fear that you and others had really blown it?
I did not, no.
Have you ever thought that?
So as to myself,
Yes.
I do not believe, I still do not to today believe that the information I had was any precursor to the sexual abuse of minors. I have learned subsequently, as a result, I think, of the NPR interview, it's the first time I heard that other archdiocesan officials had other information about Curtis Waymire.
What archdiocese officials had other information that you didn't?
I don't know
Who?
I don't know the who's. I know the information was about a DWI and about a camping trip. That's what I have.
So you are led to believe by Eisenzimmer a report has been made as required by law, correct?
That's correct.
Did Eisenzimmer tell you that he had reported, did he tell you that he had reported?
I don't recall that.
So all you thought at that point in time is that it had been reported as mandated because it was child sexual abuse.
That's correct.
So anything else happen on that Tuesday evening besides the exchange and or telephone conversation with Eisenzimmer pertaining to this that you haven't told us?
No. Well, at least not to my recollection.
Okay.
But no, I would say more definitively no.
The following Wednesday morning, what happened pertaining to this and what was done by you and others, knowing what you now have heard the night before?
I arrived at the Chancery at the appointed time for the meeting. I do not recall what the appointed time was. I believe that's recorded. I sat in and learned the sad facts of this crime.
Who convened the meeting, by the way?
I believe Father Laird did. It took place in his office.
And at that time, Laird is your successor as Vicar General?
He was my successor +2, but yes, he was my successor.
Okay. And was Archbishop Neinstadt informed of the meeting and the need for it?
I have to presume so because I received a decree, or at least I was told the decree was signed by him, but I was not part of informing him.
Okay. And who told you the decree had been signed?
Ms. Hasselberger.
She's the Chancellor for Canonical Affairs.
She was the Chancellor for Canonical Affairs at that time.
Okay. And who's in attendance at the meeting? Besides Laird, yourself?
I believe Eisenzimmer and Hasselberger.
Okay. And the purpose of the meeting is to decide what are we going to do with this report of Waymire, having abused the child.
Yes, I believe that's a fair summary. I think it was perhaps narrower than that. What do we do next with this report?
In that meeting, did anybody alert or discuss that a report had been made? Or was it your assumption a report had been made?
My recollection is that I was reassured again that the report had been made.
By whom?
By at least one and probably by all three of the people present, because I do recall asking once again. This has been reported as required, is that true? And I remember that because I objected to our immediate application of a decree. The delivery of a decree is what I mean by application, because my own concern was that it could, in this short period of time, it could interfere with the police investigation.
Was Deacon Vomistek at the meeting?
He was summoned into the meeting at the very end of it, as I recall.
By whom?
When I objected, pardon me, that I would not go to see this priest alone.
Did you even object to even going and seeing the priest at this stage, knowing that, knowing what you had learned from the Montero experience, that, you know, stay away, let the police do their job?
I raised that very objection.
Who insisted that you go over your objection?
Ms. Hazelberger particularly indicated that it was critical that this decree be administered immediately.
Anyone else?
I believe not.
Were you aware that Laird had been placed in charge of the investigation?
I'm not aware of that to today, so.
You were you handed a copy of the decree?
Believe I was. Yeah.
The decree states that it had been reported that there had been sexual abuse by Waymeyer of a child on June the 18th. What do you know about that having been reported to the Archbishop?
I, to the day, know nothing about that.
At the meeting that was held that morning, was a discussion of interviewing the child and whether or not the child had been interviewed and should be interviewed if he hadn't.
I don't recall any discussion about that.
Do you know if the child had been interviewed at that time?
I don't know that.
Was there discussion of Greta Sawyer's involvement in the investigation at that meeting?
You're bringing up Greta's name as first impression for me, so my memory is blank in her regard.
Are you aware that Greta Sawyer interviewed the child and the mother?
I'm not.
At the meeting, was there discussion of how and when officials of the Archdiocese became aware of the child abuse?
While it strains my own credulity to think there wasn't some sort of discussion, I don't recall any.
Did Andy Eisenzimmer ever tell you in the call or the emails how the information had been reported and by whom?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall receiving from Eisenzimmer or anybody in the meeting the fact that the mother had called Father Erickson and reported to Father John Erickson that her son had been abused by Curtis Waymeyer?
I don't recall that, no.
Do you have any recollection of Erickson having been identified or involved at all at that time of the meeting?
I don't think I learned anything that involves Father John Paul Erickson's name at that time.
And so after you expressed your reservation, I think you said objection actually to actually going there, correct?
That's correct.
Your objection was overridden by your account by Jennifer Hasselberger?
By Jennifer, who said it had to be administered immediately.
And that is the simple delivery of the decree.
That's correct.
And that puts Waymeyer on notice of both his rights, correct?
Yes, well, I don't recall the details of the decree, but one of the reasons for giving a decree is to, I suppose, like giving a Miranda warning or some other parallel that I don't know very well in civil war.
And under canon law, it says that he doesn't have to talk, but it does give him notice that he's a suspect of a canonical crime, and he's now under investigation under decree of the Archbishop, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's a very exact description of the decree the promoter serves. Nicely done.
How long was the meeting?
Was less than an hour, but I can't say how much less than an hour.
And any notes made or recording of that, as far as you know?
Not to my knowledge. Later that same day, I produced a memorandum summarizing my involvement, which I presume you've had access to. But
we do.
Yeah.
And your instruction was to simply present the decree and not get information, wasn't it?
It was to present the decree. That was my instruction. There was no non-instruction with it. There was no don't do X, Y, or Z. There was simply present the decree.
Why did you tell Waymeyer that the police were onto him and that a report had been made?
Of course, he had to know that because we're mandated reporters. If we had the information, the police were notified.
Why did you tell Waymeyer that, though? Because that tipped him off.
He, of course, knew that. As soon as he knew that we were accusing him of sexual abuse of minors, he knew that he was.
How do you know that he knew that? The decree didn't say that.
He said, I guess I'm in trouble, aren't I? And I said, I think you are, Curtis. Would you like to go with me to the police station and make a statement to them?
Father, are you assuming that he knew that the police were on their way and investigating this? Or do you actually know that he knew that?
I know that he knew that he was about to be arrested. And about to be, we didn't discuss any terms. I offered to take him to the police so that he could make a statement.
You were instructed by the Archbishop, were you not, to protect his rights?
I don't recall any specific instruction to that regard.
You were instructed by the Archbishop to also make sure he was safe. That Waymeyer was safe.
I don't think the Archbishop gave me any instruction in that regard. No.
And when you went to the parish at Blessed Sacrament, where Waymeyer was, you spent an hour with him, did you not?
It was close to an hour. I'm not sure it was a full hour, but it's close to an hour.
If your instruction is to simply serve the decree and put him on notice and not do an investigation, why did you spend as much time with him as you did?
Yes. So let me again say, my instruction was to serve the decree. I had no instruction not to do anything further. So the instruction was to serve the decree.
So you're now working as an investigator?
Not working as an investigator.
Well, what are you doing then? Spending as much time with a suspect,
right?
At that point in time as you did.
Either at the end of the meeting, or from Deacon Vomastik in the car. But I believe at the end of the meeting in the chancery, I learned that he had a gun. This, I believe, was reported to us by our staff, by the staff in the parish. I don't recall the source of it. I was concerned not to leave a man, and let me add, I believe I also, although I don't know when I learned the identity of the abuse victim, subsequently probably victims, I believe I knew that the complaint by that had come from a member of the staff. And I had reason to suspect that person was in the building. I don't think I knew her identity. So I was afraid that having served the decree to a man who'd committed a horrific crime, at least allegedly, and who had a gun, could pose a danger for the other people in the room, in the house. So I convinced him, I sought to, and then it successfully convinced him to turn over his gun to me. I sold that to him on the notion that a person who's been accused of some serious failing is likely to harm himself. And so I got him to agree to give me the gun. He said, "I'm not going to hurt myself. Why don't you give me the gun anyway, Curtis?" I told him.
You also had information that he had a computer, and on the computer he had pornography, child pornography, correct?
No,
You took this computer, did you not?
I did. But your question was about information. I walked into his office, and there was a computer open on the top of his desk.
Did you look at the computer once you took it back to the chancery?
I did not.
Who did you turn it over to?
To Jennifer Hasselberger.
And did you
Actually,
ever,
could I say, I asked John Vomastik to do so, and John told me subsequently he did so. I did not turn it over to Jennifer.
okay, the same day that you retrieved it from him?
Yes.
Did you order that he give it to you?
I said, "I think the Archbishop would like to have your computer. Could I take it for you?" And he immediately said yes.
Why? Why did you think the Archbishop wanted his computer?
Well, of course, I said the Archbishop because I wanted him to turn over the computer. I presumed that the computer would be useful to the police, and thought it best that, having now notified him that he was in imminent trouble, that it would be better to preserve the chain of evidence.
And when you returned to the chancery, what did you report and do? Very briefly, did you report to whom did you report?
I don't think I actually went into the chancery when I returned. I believe I just dropped off Deacon Vomastik and went on my way. It's possible that I did go in, but I have no memory of that.
And you did ultimately prepare a memo that basically recounts what you did and when you did it?
I did, and ultimately meeting that afternoon, I believe.
And you said there was a meeting that afternoon pertaining to this?
I don't recall that.
Okay. The memo.
I mean, I didn't say that now. I produced the memo that afternoon.
Okay. And to whom did you produce the memo?
You know, I don't recall. I presume it's written in the memo.
You spent up to an hour with Waymeyer. Did you discuss with him the fact that he had used, or you knew, and it was known that he'd used the trailer to travel with at least this child and abuse him?
I don't think I knew that at the time.
Did
So
you
the answer to the question is no.
Did you see the trailer parked outside Blessed Sacrament?
I don't recall that. Of course, I had no information about the trailer at the time, so I don't think I had any reason to be concerned about it. Look for a trailer.
Did you order him to leave the parish?
I suggested it'd be better if he not stay around. Yes.
And did you effectively read him his rights under canon law, that he didn't have to talk to you?
I don't recall that.
Did you ask him if he had abused the child?
I don't recall that either. If
Why
I
not?
asked him. Right.
Why didn't you want to know?
Well, I already presumed he had, of course.
Why did you presume that?
Because reliable people were telling me that they believed the complaint.
Did you ask him you knew the complaint was pertaining to one child. Did you ask him how many kids he had abused at that point in time beyond the one that you believed he had?
I did not.
Why not? Isn't that something that you would want to know?
My job, of course, was to deliver the decree. I was not particularly comfortable even then with the process, recognizing that he was going to address the public authorities and eventually the canonical authorities. So I had no particular interest in exploring my own questions with him. That wasn't my job and not a good idea.
Actually, as a promoter of justice, you have an obligation to preserve his right not to talk to you about what he actually did, correct?
We don't have in church law the same specific Supreme Court thing, but we do have a law, a specific canon that says that no one can be compelled by authority to manifest his or her conscience. That's as close as we come to a Miranda-like warning.
You believe that Archbishop Neinstead knew you were going to the parish to deliver the decree?
I believe that Archbishop knew someone was going to the parish to deliver the decree. I don't know when he came to know that I and John Vomostik had actually carried it out.
Were you designated to do this because of your experience with this issue?
I believe so. I believe, as a matter of fact, being asked for specifically that reason.
It is recorded somewhere that Laird designated you for two reasons. One, your experience, well, actually three. Your experience in the area, but your goals were, one, to protect Waymeyer's safety, and that he might be suicidal. Do you remember that?
Part of why I removed the gun, of course.
And the second was to protect his canonical rights. Do you remember being told that?
I don't recall that specifically. May I ask where that comes from, Mr. Anderson?
That's a memorandum that is prepared pertaining to the meeting in June 21.
Okay. That sounds like the kind of thing a canon lawyer might have prepared. Would that have been Ms. Hazelberger?
I can't speak to that, but I can if we need to address it.
It's just curiosity.